For all of you wishing Pelosi and others that you are frustrated and wanting to see justice, be patient, their day is almost done. Stay in prayer.
Back in 2011, I wrote a book that exposed the alarming patterns by which members of Congress's stock portfolios were outperforming the nation's top hedge funds. That book led to the passage of the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act.
The Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act, Stock Act, enacted April 4, 2012, is an act of Congress designed to combat insider trading. It was signed into law by President Barack Obama on April 4, 2012. The law prohibits the use of non-public information for private profit, including insider trading by members of Congress and other government employees. Republican Senator Scott Brown and Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand introduced bills to combat the practice. In February 2012, the Stock Act passed in the Senate by a 96-3 vote. The only no votes were Senators Jeff Bingaman, Richard Burr, and Tom Coburn. Later the House of Representatives passed it by a 417-2 vote. The bill was supported heavily by vulnerable incumbents and signed into law by President Obama. According to the current United States Senate Select Committee on Ethics, a member, officer, or employee of the Senate shall not receive any compensation, nor shall he permit any compensation to accrue to his beneficial interest from any source, the receipt or accrual of which would occur by virtue of influence improperly exerted from his position as a member, officer, or employee.
Or Stock Act. Sadly, the recent activities of Congress show that, even in times of the most unimaginable crisis, our nation's health still takes a backseat to Washington's wealth. While Congress wrestled for weeks to pass legislation, some senators were much quicker to act when it came to their own personal fortunes. According to their financial disclosures, Republican Senators Richard Burr and Kelly Loeffler, along with Democrat Dianne Feinstein, all sold large amounts of stock in advance of the stock market collapse. Many of these transactions occurred shortly after Congress was briefed behind closed doors by U.S. officials on the potential impact the coronavirus could have on the country. Senator Burr, who is the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee and worth a reported $1.8 million, has the most troubling pattern of behavior. On February the 4th, Senator Burr received a private briefing on how other countries were dealing with the impact of the global pandemic. Burr, who also sits on the Senate Health Committee, received another private briefing on February the 12th. The very next day, Senator Burr sold 33 stock holdings worth between $600,000 and $1.7 million. Had he not made those trades, Burr's portfolio would have been down by 30% within weeks. But Burr is hardly alone. Senator Kelly Loeffler, who is married to the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange, also sits on the Senate Health Committee. On January the 24th, the same day that Senate committee received a private briefing about the spread of the global pandemic, Loeffler and her husband began selling stock. They eventually unloaded $3 million worth of shares in 27 separate transactions. 2 days after the Senate received a classified briefing on the coronavirus, Loeffler's husband, Jeffrey Sprecher, sold $3.5 million worth of his own company's stock. Senator Dianne Feinstein's financial disclosures expose a similar trend. Within weeks of receiving a private Senate briefing, Feinstein's husband unloaded between $1 and $5 million worth of stock. Even U.S. House members got in on the action, with California Congresswoman Susan Davis selling airline and cruise industry stock in advance of the market collapse. Burr says his trades were not based on inside information, but by information gained by watching cable news. Senator Loeffler insists that her family's stock trades are made by third parties without her knowledge because of her husband's position at the New York Stock Exchange. Senator Feinstein makes a similar claim, saying that her funds are in a blind trust. The trouble is, the Feinstein stock trade involved her husband's assets, which most definitely are not in a blind trust. Both senators are trying to create the impression that their trades must have been clean because their assets were in a blind trust. But let's be clear. Congressional disclosure forms have a box that must be checked if your assets are indeed in a blind trust. Neither senator did so concerning the trades in actions. And let's keep in mind, there are still dozens of U.S. senators who have yet to disclose any trades they might have made in the same time period.
So shall it be at the end of the world. The angel shall go forth, and sever the bad from among the just, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth.